And suddenly, this voice is heard. This is so wrong on every score. Sam George is now attacked by a well-built man in plain clothes. The man in black now throws his hand towards the cheek of Mr. George, akin to a slap.
Tonight, as we await government's white paper, the Ayawaso West Wogan Commission is recommending massive changes at the national security setup following violence that rocked the by-election on January 31.
The Commission recommends that President Akufo-Addo review and restructure the Ministry of National Security establishment with a view to ensure clarity of responsibilities and roles as well as lines of reporting. The Minister of State appointed to the presidency to the Ministry of National Security should have a clearly delineated role with responsibilities indexed to that of the substantive sector minister.
We have fresh details plus recommendation for the immediate removal of DSP Azugu from command responsibility, criminal prosecution of Double, and the reprimanding of Minister of State in charge of National Security, Brian Champong. You want to stay for details here on Top Story, brought to you by Vodafone. The future is exciting. Ready? Bond savings and loans. Your success, our passion. Gassam Cement, the nation builder.
On every score, but no matter how long.
And suddenly, this voice is heard. This is so wrong on every score. Sam George is now attacked by a well-built man in plain clothes. The man in black now throws his hand towards the cheek of Mr. George, akin to a slap.
Scores of men believed to be NDC supporters are seen following the uniformed men. That was after they prevented them from getting access to the house of the NDC parliamentary candidate. The first gunshots are heard. Some of the supporters retreat as they try to take cover, but the gunfire continued unabated.
So it was a by-election that left scars on the nation. The replacement of the late Emmanuel Chemantiejako turned out bloody and chaotic amidst gunshots resulting in severe injuries. A commission of inquiry was then set up by the president with a month's mandate to unravel circumstances leading to the violence that characterized that by-election. Raymond Nakwa joins me in studio with a copy of the Emil Short Commission report. Raymond, not to open old wounds though, but take us back to January 31, 2019. What exactly happened?
The Electoral Commission conducted the by-elections of the Ayawaso West Wogan following the death of the Member of Parliament. That point you've made. While the elections proceeded normally in the generality of the polling stations comprising the constituency, the conduct of the election in the Baleshi Presbyterian Basic 1 cluster of schools polling station was nearly marred seriously by very serious violence involving the use of firearms, which occurred around the residence of the parliamentary candidate for the NDC, about 150 meters as the crow flies from the Labaleshi Presbyterian Basic School, which doubled as a polling station on that day. Some important incidents happened. One, the degree of violence caused some people to take refuge at the polling center, and this disrupted voting and caused the election to be halted for about 45 minutes, after which voting resumed. Now, of particular note, the report indicates was that about 8:10 a.m., a convoy of 10 vehicles, some of which were marked police, but not bearing the GP number plates of the Ghana Police Service, arrived at the school park. On board of the vehicles were men dressed in uniform consisting of the ginger-colored, described as khaki trousers with black shirts on which they had the embossment NSC. Some of these men wore masks and carried arms, pistols as sidearms, and AK-47. They were later identified as the National Security Council Secretariat, the SWAT unit. That SWAT unit is also being given several details. There was wild shooting of live bullets as a result of the confrontation that occurred between a crowd that had massed up in front of the residence of the NDC candidate and the SWAT team. Now, mainstream and social media footages also show scenes of chaos and instances of brutality being meted out to civilians in the proximity of the election grounds. And the report indicates that the televised images of the violence led to sustained national discussions on the nature of this new security force. More generally, the issue arose of the effectiveness of the security in the country to deal with this particular matter. Mindful of the fact that it's a by-election, and when you extend it, by-elections in Etiwa, Triponi, Talensi constituency being some examples of this trend in times past. So basically, this is what the report found as the true account of events of the day.
Well, there are some broad recommendations, but let's start with that of the individuals. What did the commission say?
The commission specifically stated that for individual liabilities, the commission recommended the prosecution of Mr. Ernest Akomia alias Double for the unauthorized possession of firearms under Section 1921 of the Criminal Offences Act. You remember Double said he was trained for a couple of weeks at a Suchare, and then he had the right to actually use the, and previously phone dealer who works with the national security. And indeed, he was part of this particular team that had the shirt on. Now, the commission recommends the criminal prosecution for the offense of assault. That's to wit, the slapping of Samuel George, the member of parliament, by Mohammed Suleimana, that individual that's captured on the particular tape. Now, the commission also recommends the immediate removal of DSP Samuel Kojo Azugu from command responsibility as the Ministry of National Security, given his failure to appropriately command and control the SWAT team of which he had charge during the operation at the Labaleshi School polling station. It is recommended, and there's a soft side to this, that he should be reassigned by the IGP.
Okay, so it talks about Colonel Opoku as well.
Yes, this Colonel Opoku was the man who was ultimately responsible for the SWAT operations because he's the director of operations at the National Security today. The recommendation is that the commission is recommending a reprimand for his conduct on the day. His liability is further reinforced by his failure to properly define the mission for which the SWAT team was sent and ensuring that the SWAT team complied with the defined mission. Further, it states here, he failed to conduct an internal inquiry into identifying the culprits of the offense when revelations became rife that there were operational lapses resulting in the violations of human rights there.
Okay, so that's not all the individuals, and that's captured by the commission in that report. It talks about the Minister of State in charge of national security and the man who slapped Sam George as well.
Very good. It is elevated to the level that the Minister of State in charge of national security, Brian Achampon, be reprimanded for his ultimate responsibility as minister in authorizing an operation of that character and on day of an election in the built-up area of such sort. So that was the specific recommendation of that. You talked about the Sam George incident. Exactly. Indeed, the indication is that the gentleman by name Mohammed Suleimana ought to be prosecuted for the offense of assault for slapping the sitting member of parliament for Ningo Pram Pram.
Well, there's talk also about structural recommendations. You've talked about the individual liabilities. Let's talk about the structures. What did the commission say? The
commission is recommending that the president should review and restructure the Ministry of National Security establishment with a view to ensuring clarity of responsibilities and roles as well as lines of reporting. Indeed, they move on to give specifically what the recommendations should be. The commission recommends the establishment of a standing command and control center, which is tasked, among others, with the role of assessing and processing intelligence for rapid deployment. This center would incorporate key officers of the allied internal security agencies, including the police, the military, the national security, the fire service, and the customs. Now, on that particular role, the Minister of State, and currently a position occupied by Brian Achampon, who is being recommended for reprimand, appointed at the presidency to the Ministry of National Security, should have a clearly delineated role with responsibilities indexed to that of the substantive sector minister, who is Albert Kandapa. Now, this should establish a clear chain of command and the circumstances under which he or she can act in the absence of the substantive minister in this particular case.
Well, there were some recommendations for punishments as well as compensations as well. Raymond, you quickly take us through the rest of the report. At least we have the compensations as well. Let's quickly go through that.
So the commission recommended that the payment of financial compensation to some people, specifically for injuries sustained by them arising out of the reckless gunshots by the SWAT team, and that is to say, Mr. Theophilo Sedofu, Seydou Zane, James Moore, Mohammed Al Hassan, and Isha Huyaro. These are the people who directly will have to receive financial rewards for actually being dealt with that way. The commission also recommended the payment of compensation to the following persons for damage caused to their properties. The first one is the owner of a vehicle, model is unknown to the commission, with registration number GE384417. Okay. Now, owner of Kia Picanto vehicle with registration number GW104517. The last one is Mrs. Justine. She's the owner of a beauty salon which is bordering the road, and we know that that particular place had a lot of damage down to it.
And that's captured in Maxwell Agbagba's report
very much
as well.
so, yes. There are also some general recommendations, really.
I'm sure you'll quickly go through that, then we go over onto the phone lines.
The commission recommended that the structure of reporting within the national security should be revised immediately.
Okay.
The commission also recommended that the roles and responsibility within the setup should be streamlined and clarified. And the commission recommended the immediate criminalization of the establishment and or funding and other support for militia organizations in Ghana. And this, I'm sure you may be aware by now, is in the Militia and the Vigilante and Other Offences Act currently having been established.
Well, Raymond Akwa, they're taking us through recommendations and findings of the Ayawaso West Wogon Commission set up and led by Emil Short. Let's go over onto the phone lines. Like I said, we're privileged to be joined on the phone by the Executive Secretary to that commission, Mr. Ernest Kofi Abuchi. We've also been joined on the phone by Ningo Prampram MP Sam George. We'll start with you, Mr. Ernest Kofi Abuchi. We are grateful for your time. Have we lost Mr. Abuchi on the phone? Do we have Mr. Abuchi on the phone? Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
I'm here.
We're grateful for your time here on Top Story. Fantastic report, as some have described it. Very comprehensive work done by the Commission. But as we wait for the white paper, are you hopeful that all the recommendations in this Commission's report will be taken up?
First of all, the government speaks through the white paper. And until the white paper is officially issued, I will not want to second guess the government. Not only is it inappropriate, but it may amount to some embarrassment to the government. And so I think that having come this far and the government having done what is constitutionally needful, the government clearly is on track. I think it will be appropriate to just wait until the white paper is issued, and then it becomes a public conversation. But at this stage, making any official statement in one shape or the other may amount to stampeding the government in one shape or the other, which may also, as I said, constitute some embarrassment, and for which cause I would not want to make an official comment about acceptance, refusal, or others.
Whilst you were working on this report also, another, law was being formulated, I should say, which is the Vigilantism and Other Related Offences Bill. There were those who had the thought that your work should be incorporated into that. A suggestion you agree with?
Again, you are pushing me in directions to make comments about things that are... Look, here's the point. First of all, I have been honored, and the commissioners have been honored to have been appointed into this public service, or national service of a kind or sort. And we have delivered on the mandate. I think that comments that are related to the work that we did, which were of a public character, I would not want to make a comment on those. And I know you're itching to probably hear our perspectives in that respect. But again, even discussing those things may be a bit of a moot point, because as we speak, that law is law. And so discussing whether things should have been done in one direction or the other, again, maybe discussing a moot point. So I think that, look, we have had some gradual, steady progression in the last couple of months, as far as this issue of vigilantism, as far as this issue of militia and the disturbances of their actions are concerned. I think as a country, one thing that we can all agree on is that we have not gone to bed. There has been action. The president himself took the bold action. The commission has done its work, presented its work. The president has now made it public. The white paper will be presented or will be published, I'm sure. And in the end, the country will be informed of the government's position. I think that will inform, again, the next steps moving forward. But the one thing is clear, as I indicated, that the issue of vigilantism and its concomitant effect on our national psyche, our national development, and everything there is to it is one that has excited the action and attention of government, and for which cause, hopefully, it will bring the practice on it.
I respect the fact that you would not talk more on this until you see the white paper. But just before I let you off, though, Mr. Kofi Abuchi, I would want to find out from you how satisfied you are with the work that you've put out. Okay,
so first of all, we are thankful to the president. The chairman of the commission made that clear to the president when the report was handed over to the president. The commissioners worked tirelessly, and the commission as a whole worked tirelessly. We were going to work even on weekends, on Saturdays and Sundays. We were working. We worked overnight, and within a period of 1 month, we were able to deliver and submit the reports. I must confess, in the beginning, I actually thought it was quite a tall order, but the commissioners worked tirelessly, and I think that they have delivered in respect of what the president requested. The whole expectation is to ensure that somehow, as I indicated, the practice of vigilantism and the whole challenges posed by the practice of vigilantism is nipped in the bud. So overall, given the report that has been submitted, and again, without trying to stampede the government in any shape or form, the commission is of the view that they were able to present a report to the president. I'm confident that the government would issue a white paper that reflects the work that has been done. But ultimately, the government white paper is what would dictate the way forward. And I do not want to make any statement that shifts that particular process in any direction, because the president has the prerogative to decide exactly what is accepted, what is rejected, or what is partly accepted and partly rejected, among others. And that prerogative should be respected.
And we'll all wait for that. Thank you very much for your time. That's Executive Secretary of the Emil Short Commission, Ernest Kofi Abochi. We've been joined on the phone also by the Ningo Pram MP, Mr. Sam George. We are grateful for your time here on Top Story. You got a paragraph or two in this report that I have before me, but I would first want to find out from you your general impressions with what you've heard from this Commission's report.
Well, MFL, let me say a very good evening to your listeners, and let me state for the record that I have not seen the report because the report has still not been published by government.
Exactly, that's why I said what you've heard so far.
Yes, and that's the first point I'll make. I mean, when you have a president who is supposed to be a respecter of the rule of law, flouting our constitution with impunity, it gives you cause for worry. Article 283 of the Constitution says within 6 months, the government must publish the report and the white paper. Even with your own journalistic work, you have not been able to lay hands on the white paper. Discussing any report, if this report is authentic, it is meaningless without reference to a government white paper. The white paper should have and report should have been published by the 14th of September, which was Saturday. It's 96 hours past the date the Minister for Information told us government had published. He lied to us. And so it's unfortunate that we would have to be in the realms of conjecture, because we don't know whether the report is authentic.
I'm not sure that is accurate, because you've just heard the Executive Secretary speak to me right here. You did not hear him dispute any portions of what we've put out in this document.
The Constitution does not put any requirement on my very good friend, lawyer Ernest Kofi Abochi, to publish a report. So it does not lie in his mouth at this point in time to authenticate a report or not. The Constitution 2083 puts the prerogative on the president.
And you must have heard also the Information Minister state that the report has been published. I'm sure you've heard that.
And I'm saying that that's a lie. If it is true, when reports are gazetted, government reports are gazetted, the Assembly Press is the place to go. This afternoon, I sent someone to the Assembly Press. I spoke to the officer at the Assembly Press. They tell me the report is still not ready. And if anybody is in doubt what publication of government reports are, you can refer to the ex parte Salifu 1968 case as determined by the courts of the Republic of Ghana on what constitutes publishing by government of Ghana. It includes the gazetting processes. So if government told us on Saturday 14th that they had published the report, and as at today 18th, 96 clear hours, the Assembly Press does not have one copy of the report. Nobody has cited the government white paper. The president has flouted the Constitution.
Well, so I don't know if you would still be able to talk about your general impressions about what you've heard. Amongst others, the Commission recommends the criminal prosecution for the offense of assault, to which the slapping of Mr. Samuel George, which is you, by Mohammed Suleimana. It also the Commission recommends the criminal prosecution of Mr. Ernest Akumia, alias Double, for the unauthorized possession of firearms under Section 1921 of the Criminal Offences Act, amongst several others that you've heard. Your general impressions, though?
Well, I would speak to what you are purporting to read from, which I cannot authenticate. If that document turns out to be correct, you would say that the Commission has done quite some work However, when you look at the section that you have read specific to my person, where they speak about the assault on me and identify one man, I prayed the commission to compel national security to identify the second individual who attacked me. I was attacked by 2 individuals. The videos I presented before the commission was evidence of that. There was another hooded gentleman in a brown khaki. It appears that my plea was not heeded or acceded to by the commission. And they made reference to only the one individual I mentioned and named in my testimony. Well, if they've recommended criminal prosecution, assault is a criminal case. And so it is just the natural consequence of events. However, like I've stated earlier, all of this discussion as to the recommendations, no matter how lofty and how novel the recommendations of the commission are, they are of very little consequence in the scheme of things, because the way forward is going to be determined by government's white paper, which is government's position paper. Government can decide that they would accept 100% the recommendations of the commission. Government can decide that they would throw out all the recommendations. They can decide to pick and choose which they would use. And so at this point in time, we can praise the commission for doing a good job. And I have so much respect for the 3 commissioners and their team and the work that they did in service of our country. Listening to excerpts of what you have read, the need for structural adjustment and alignment of our security apparatus, very, very incredible and important work they've done. However, all of those recommendations remain nothing if government fails to work with it. And so the Minister for Information must come and apologize to the Ghanaian people for lying to us and then provide us the government white paper. It is only on the basis of the government white paper that we will know how government seeks to proceed. It is government's position that will determine whether we would say we've made headway with the commission or the commission was just another soap opera.
Okay, but are you hopeful that the president will act on all the recommendations by this commission?
Well, with the president being the chief clearing agent, what do you expect? I have little hope. I mean, he should prove me wrong, but it's up to him. I mean, on the aspect that has to do with the individual who, Mr. Ernest Akomia, I mean, his own testimony is what is leading to any such recommendations. He testified that he went and picked the weapon. I didn't make that testimony. He made his own testimony. If on the basis of his own testimony he has been recommended for prosecution, like I said, ultimately it comes back to the president. But then our president is the chief clearing agent. He clears his people, he clears corrupt and criminal activities.
We will leave it here, Mr. Sam George. We are grateful for your time. That's the Ningo Pram MP there. He's mentioned in that report. You all recall events leading to the setting up of this commission, the by-election on that day. And before us, we've been talking about the Ayawaso West Wogon event, a commission of inquiry that was set up, led by Justice Emil Short, and the recommendations and findings after the 1-month mandate expired. A number of recommendations and findings they put together in this report, and amongst others, for individual liabilities, the Commission recommends the criminal prosecution of Mr. Ernest Akomia alias Double for the unauthorized possession of firearms under Section 192 Clause 1 of the Criminal Offences Act. The Commission also recommends the criminal prosecution for the offence of assault, to wit the slapping of Mr. Samuel George by Mohammed Suleimana. Now, the Commission also recommends the immediate removal of DSP Samuel Kojo Azugu from command responsibility at the Ministry of National Security, given his failure to appropriately command and control the SWAT team of which he had charge during the operation of the La Bawaleshi school polling station. It is recommended that he should be reassigned by the IGP. Now, the Commission also recommends the reprimand of Colonel Mike Opoku for being ultimately responsible for the outcome of the SWAT operation at the La Bawaleshi school polling station. So his liability is further reinforced by his failure to properly define the mission for which the SWAT team was sent and ensuring that the SWAT team complied with the defined mission. Now, further, he failed to conduct an internal inquiry into identifying the culprits of the offense when revelations became rife that there were operational lapses resulting in violations of human rights. Now, Colonel Opoku is also further recommended that he's made to immediately release the weapons used for, as well as the personnel involved in the operation, to enable ballistic testing and analysis to be undertaken and for further investigations by the police. Now, finally, on the individual liabilities, the Commission recommends that Mr. Brian Champong be reprimanded for his ultimate responsibility as minister in authorizing an operation of that character and on a day of an election in the built-up area. But just before we forget, this is what transpired on that day.
Scores of men believed to be NDC supporters are seen following the uniformed man. That was after they prevented them from getting access to the house of the NDC parliamentary candidate. The first gunshots are heard. Some of the supporters retreat as they try to take cover, but the gunfire continued unabated.
Charlie, right now they point the gun come here.
Even as some of them fled the scene, others will still remain to face the men unarmed. But soon, that false sense of invincibility vanished into thin air as a few courageous ones will also now begin to hide behind shops, trees and vehicles. Now it begins to feel like a war zone as a voice is heard yelling in the background for the men to shoot. When the shooting finally recedes, a man in a white shirt and jeans is seen at the back of a car bleeding from his knee. He alerts the people around him about his injury. Another man is seen with a deep wound in his biceps as he is also put in the vehicle.
That's the broken
I'm down.
Who's driving the car? They should take him away.
No. Take him to our car.
No, they should take him away. He's bleeding out.
Events of that day, that's January 31, put together by my colleague Maxwell Agbagba. That's it for Top Story in today's edition, and it's brought to you by Vodafone. The future is exciting. Ready? Bond savings and loans, your success, our passion. Gasem, the nation builder. I am MFA Paul. Do stay for News Night happening shortly.